I feel so strongly my partner should know, they start shoulding on each other. Well, you should know this, but, loving somebody doesn't make your partner psychic.
Hey, everyone. Welcome to the show today. And for all of you right now that are thinking and asking the question, am I in a healthy relationship? Am I, when you start to measure the bar? Well, today I have somebody that is going to be able to help us all understand that what is that point where we need to start thinking about, okay, this may not be as healthy for myself as I should be wanting, but even more importantly, this awesome guest has just written how to have a healthy relationship in an unhealthy world. So we're going to get some key takeaways that right now, this is October. We are now it is the Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And we're going to really be looking at are there certain things that you can be doing in your relationship to up-level yourself, to be a better partner? And isn't that that would ultimately have us all get to another level of our own happiness? So I have Dr. Laura Streyffeler on today. She's a licensed mental health counselor who maintains a private counseling practice as well. She's board certified expert in traumatic stress. And Dr. Laura is a diplomate of the American Academy of Experts in Trauma. You're hearing all trauma here. But really, when I started to talk to her and understand, there's more issues going on right now with relationships, and what can we actually do to elevate ourselves to be a better partner, to understand that with all the stresses going on, that you do have you have choices to make. So I want to welcome Dr. Laura. Thank you so much for being here today.
Well, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited.
Well, and I think we have a lot to cover because there is so much going on in the world that we have anxieties. I know that right now you are in Florida, and there is a hurricane that is being, basically you're being told in the next 24 hours that this is going to come in. And we started to talk before the show, and it's okay, between climate issues, hurricanes, fires, global pandemics, it seems like today, Dr. Laura, there is just so much stress and anxiety that what can we do before we even begin this conversation? How do we even begin to start to control all of these pressures that are coming on us?
Well, the first thing we need to do is remember to breathe. Oxygen, it kind of gives us a minute to get grounded, but the oxygen also counteracts the adrenaline. And, so many people are or feel like they are in survival mode right now that they're not even taking a minute to sit and breathe.
It's so true. And we have these short little breaths, right? We don't take that, really breathe in the oxygen, as you said.
Yeah. And people don't even realize they're not breathing. I have people come into my office every day and I just have to say, breathe. And if they're breathing, it's that anxiety breathing and not just the relaxation breathing. So breathing is really a critical part, not only that air we breathe to live, but also to relax.
Already within the first couple of minutes, you've gotten the best therapy advice out there. Take a deep breath, everybody.
In through the nose, out through the mouth.
Exactly. So now, Dr. Laura, what caused you at this point? Because I love that I went to your website and in getting to know you more, you said therapy is not just for crazy people. therapy is often for healthy people who want to have healthier lives?
Well, I've been a therapist for about 30 years now. And, thank goodness things have changed substantially where more and more people are getting into therapy, and it's just really about gathering tools and learning different, healthier ways to deal with life situation. And sometimes it's just about vomiting, getting rid of all the stress and the anxiety, and to be able to just hear your thoughts outside your head instead of inside your head.
So, do you think that the perception of therapy is, as more people are starting to awaken to this idea of like talking to someone's a good thing, right?
I think it depends on who you're talking to. As a general overall answer, I'd say yes. I think for younger people, it's very mainstream. I think for kids and college students and even people in their young 20s, therapy is a staple, something that they're very used to. People in their 50s, 60s, 70s, I've seen so many older people in my practice that have said to me, I've never been to therapy before. They never had a reason. Well, they've had plenty of reason to go to therapy, but they either believed it was for crazy people, or it was something that you kept in the family, or you didn't talk to people about things, or they didn't want to appear weak. But now there are just so many stressors that people just are struggling with, not only stress and anxiety, but panic and depression. And it's getting to the point where they can't deal with it themselves. So they're finally reaching out for help, and society is telling them it's okay to do that.
Which is so great. I have a great story that a friend of mine, when she was much younger, she was a waitress, and there was this darling couple that came in, and they had obviously been together for, many, many years, of which she found out they had been together 50 plus years. And my girlfriend said, so, what do you attribute the success of your marriage? And the lady said, January. And my friend was like, January? Well, January? She said, every January we go to therapy, no matter if we need it or not. And if we really need it, we stay in therapy for, as long as we need, month, 2 months, 3 months. And if we're really good, then we only have 1 or 2 or 3 sessions. So I've always thought about that, there's this point where it's not looked at as being a negative. It's looked at as being, something really that can help you get through the stressors. And one of the things that, as you and I were talking, these days, there's, you've written this great book, How to Have a Healthy Relationship in an Unhealthy World. Why did you feel like right now was the time that you had to get this book out, which I understand just launched yesterday with the paperback? So congratulations. But why? Why was this so important for you to write this book?
Well, there were a couple of things. One, for years, I've worked with victims of domestic violence, sexual violence, child abuse, people whose normal wasn't healthy. And they didn't know what healthy looked like, or didn't believe it could happen to them. And when we would do domestic or sexual violence education and explain things, people would say, Laura, I know about all this. I've been living it my whole life. What I don't know is how to have a healthy relationship. And they really wanted somebody to show them how to do that. And I do it with clients all the time in my practice. And it really has made a big difference. On top of that, through COVID, what I saw was people feeling so out of control and not being able to deal with all the things that were going on in the world. Like you said, the global warming, the COVID, not being able to go places, feeling stuck in the house with their partner, the drinking and drugging just skyrocketing because people were self-medicating things that they never processed, and they didn't understand how to deal with tough stuff they just would go out to dinner or go to work or go do something and keep themselves busy and pretended that there were no issues. And then all of a sudden something came up and they had no place to go. And it was in people's faces. And it was time that people were willing to look at a different way. I've seen more couples in my practice in the past year or two than I've probably seen in the past 10.
So this is interesting because more people are coming to see you because of the pandemic. And
Absolutely.
You're saying that there was, before the pandemic, we always had the out, we could keep ourselves busy being busy, right? I can go here, whereas then all of a sudden we were like, we had to be in one place. We couldn't leave. There wasn't an out. You couldn't go travel. You couldn't go do some business travel. You had to be present. But I guess what I'm also hearing is that there's a positive here, that more people are willing to give it a chance, are willing to give therapy. When do you suggest people come and see you? At what point are you like, you guys need to have a little counseling?
Well, you talk about the January couple. I have a couple of couples like that I see. I call it maintenance, that they come and once a month, everything that's gone on, we kind of talk about it and process it and how it was handled, how, what worked, what didn't, different things. I don't usually tell people when they should come. I think that's their call. A lot of times I'll say to couples, as soon as they come in, I can tell, what is it, me or the divorce attorney? And, sometimes, and you'd be surprised how often the answer is yes. And sometimes they just want to go through the motions so they can say they did everything that they could to make the relationship work. And a lot of times that's because there are kids involved and they really want to be able to stay together for their kids, but they wait so long that one or both of them is really, done. And then there are people that really have a problem and say, we need to go talk to somebody. I really love you. And I want this to work. And, the way that I do couples counseling is I help couples talk to each other. Some couples therapists, I say, it's almost like they're the mom or the dad, and the couple is like the two siblings, wanting to say, who's right and which side. It's not about who's right. It's about being able to communicate where the message sent is the same as the message received. And that's where communication is healthier. But what happens is couples seem to have the same argument or two over and over again for a year or two or 10, depending, and they just never really resolve. So it's not that there's everything wrong in their relationship. There's something, and for whatever reason, it starts going through all the emotions and all the other times they've had the argument. And, I feel so strongly my partner should know, they start shooting on each other. Well, you should know this. But, loving somebody doesn't make your partner psychic. And
I hope everyone heard that, because a lot of times we're with somebody and you think, well, you should know that.
You should know that. Or
it's just so
obvious, like, why don't you know that?
Yeah.
Now, if my partner after 10 years doesn't know that I like cream in my coffee and never really paid attention, okay, that we might be able to say, and still you don't want to shoot on them, but you're kind of hoping your partner pays more attention.
Yeah.
So that's different than, just expecting them to know what you're thinking or feeling.
So, Dr. Laura, you hit on something that I think I have heard from so many individuals, and that is, we're going to stay together until the kids leave the house. We're going to stay together and, we're going to make sure, because we don't want to disrupt the kids. Can you share what your thoughts are on that whole approach?
Well, I think, and I'm hesitating and I'm kind of choking on my words because I can't stand the term broken home. So often I'll have parents that'll say to me, well, I came from a broken home. Well, a relationship that didn't work, I'm trying to think how to word it, doesn't necessarily mean it was broken. The home is broken. Research shows that kids that grow up with two parents that can communicate and co-parent together separately and yet love them do better and grow up healthier than kids that grow up with two parents that really can't stand each other, or where there's domestic violence and they're afraid, or one parent lives at the address but is never there. So a lot of times people think they're staying together for the kids, but is it really what's best for the kids? In some cases it might be, but in a lot of cases it isn't. So the question is it really for the kids, or is it really for one of the partners who's not ready to leave and says it's because of the kids?
So in that scenario, do you have both the man and the woman or the couple come in and talk to you? Or do you think it's best to have therapy with just, maybe the woman first and then the man, or how do you do that?
I always see couples separately. And before I see them together, I always say, I have to see you as a me before I see you as a we. And the reason that I do that is, one, because of my background in domestic violence. I want to make sure that it's safe. And I don't necessarily mean that somebody's going to get physically hurt, but that they will in no way be punished by what they tell me. Or sometimes one partner isn't ready to tell the other partner something that's going on, but needs me as the facilitator. I think of myself more as a mediator or a translator than anything else when I do couples counseling. So I need to understand fully where both people are coming from. Doesn't mean I have to disclose it to the other partner, but I need to understand. And sometimes when you see couples together, you'll have one that will want to answer for the other, or will talk over the other, and one doesn't really have a voice, which tells me a lot, but that's not a couples session. And I don't think it's safe to do it. Then I won't see them together.
Got it. So as we go into a very quick break, I'd like to, when we come back, really talk about the, physical abuse versus emotional abuse, and where does that go from just being in a relationship and you guys are talking and you're not really getting along to that emotional abuse situation. So when we come back, we're going to be talking to Dr. Laura and getting at more of these specific questions. This episode is brought to you by my very own labor of love, my most recent book, Relaunch. This book is a collection of my stories, other stories, and is a motivational guide to living a new 3HQ lifestyle, sparking your heart to ignite your life. It's available for purchase via Amazon. Get ready to try on the 3HQ method that I've been using for years throughout my entire life, reaching the next level in all areas, both professionally and personally. Get your copy today at www.therelaunchbook.com. And welcome back, everyone. I have Dr. Laura with me. We are breaking down relationships and what is going on in today's society. And one of the questions I asked her over this break was, at what point did we start to understand that there is something called emotional abuse in marriages that has recently really come to a head? And when do we classify it as abuse? Because physically we understand when, somebody has, had a hit or something, we can understand the physical, but emotional, Dr. Laura, seems like it's a little bit harder to identify and pin down. Is that true?
It absolutely is true. And I've had so many clients say to me over the years, you're going to be mad at me when I say this, or you're going to think that I'm crazy when I say this, but I just wish he would hit me or she would hit me. Usually it's he, but gender roles have changed so much that and it can go, either way, because they say, I just wish they would hit me because then I would know I was being abused.
Hmm.
And really emotional and psychological.
That is
mental abuse,
heartbreaking.
I've heard that more times than I have fingers and toes, because they keep thinking I'm just crazy. It's just me. I must be the problem, because really emotional abuse is on your feelings, is on your heart, is on your self-esteem. You're a worthless piece of shit, and it's a good thing I'm with you because nobody would want your sorry ass. I figured probably shouldn't say this on, but these are the real words. This is real life, and people, it's bullying, and it's gaslighting or crazy make. We used to call it crazy making, which doesn't mean it makes people crazy. It just makes people feel crazy, and being crazy and feeling crazy are two totally different things.
That is so true. And you just hit upon something that when you are in a relationship, do you find with your experience that this starts kind of right away with the marriage, or is this something that comes out later?
No, usually. And the other thing before we get to that is also because people think they're the same, but they're not. There's also mental or psychological abuse, and that's using fear or manipulation or coercion or head games or gaslighting, to get a partner to do what you want. So a lot of times they're verbal, not always. So it kind of goes under the umbrella of verbal abuse, but emotional abuse and mental abuse are two different things. And usually, if you have one, you have the other. So they get the head and the heart at the same time.
And I'm all about the 3HQ, the head, the heart, the higher self. And what you're saying is that it impacts you on all levels.
Well, it absolutely does. And which is a perfect transition into, does it happen in the beginning? The answer is generally not. It comes in with, the new term is love bombing. We used to call it honeymoon, which was, after some type of argument or assault. But it's basically where you're beautiful and you're intelligent and you can't do anything wrong, and there's teddy bears and flowers and jewelry, and it's basically like winning the love lottery. And it's a way to hook you in. It's a form of manipulation. I tell people all the time, if it seems too good to be true, it usually is. And our third H, our higher self, even when that's happening, and it usually happens anywhere from 3 to 6, some people get a little bit longer, months, but there's usually something, and the gut says something's not right, but everything else is so good, people ignore their gut. And I always say, your gut is never wrong. And you can't say, damn that gut, I wish I hadn't listened to it. But, people don't. And as time goes on, the emotional abuse, the messages that kind of sprinkled in, and the psychological abuse is sprinkled in. And so it's a very slow, insidious process. So people start to doubt themselves and not their partner. And especially for people that aren't being physically abused, there's nothing concrete. And so they start questioning themselves. Very often they start to be isolated from their support system.
And if you think about it, Dr. Lura, with the whole pandemic, I mean, are you seeing a spike in both emotional and physical abuse right now because of that? Because there wasn't an out that, they're always together.
There definitely was a spike in domestic violence, even with some of the physical violence. Mm-hmm. Even though I have very mixed feelings about, they're not calling it emotional or mental abuse or domestic violence. Now they're calling it narcissist abuse. A narcissist is a very serious mental health diagnosis. It's a personality disorder. A lot of the behaviors, people can be abusive and do some of these behaviors without being a narcissist. But I think right now, narcissist abuse is a very trending hashtag topic. It's something people are reading about and talking about and feeling very open about saying. So do I think it's happening more? Absolutely not. Do I think people are talking about it more? Absolutely. I think that emotional and mental abuse have been going on in epidemic proportions for many years.
So I still think, as you're saying this, for those that are, listening to this, and is there a point that clinically you can say this is when it goes from just being mean, just being a little like nasty, just being a little bit like sensitive, to this is now abuse?
A lot of it comes from intent. One of the chapters that I have in my first book, which is about domestic violence, called Wife Beater Shirt Optional, There Is No Dress Code for Domestic Violence. I call the chapter Assholes and Bitches. And basically that just because somebody's an asshole doesn't mean they're a batterer.
Mm-hmm.
And, there are plenty of people that do not nice things, or even some of the things might be abusive, but there's a difference between the clinical definition and the legal definition. And clinically, even if it's not physical violence and it's not something you can get arrested for, domestic violence is where one person uses these behaviors to try to control the other person. So it's about controlling and manipulating the partner. It's a pattern of behavior. It's not somebody that says something nasty or might have hurt your feelings. It's a pattern of behavior to try to control their partner, feeling like if they don't keep them on a leash, that they're going to run away. So they don't want them to feel good about themselves or feel strong. And the idea that if they knew their worth, they would leave. So they make sure that they don't know their worth, feel their worth, or their partner feels that they're have more power, have more control, and are better, smarter, faster, because they always want to win. They have to win. They have to be right. Their voice is the only one that matters, my way or the highway.
So in this, if let's just say you're a woman and you're starting to say, oh, wait a second, I do feel like my partner is trying to control me, what is the best approach for them at this point? What's the first step that people can do?
Well, I think if people don't hear anything else I say, I think people need to listen to this. This is the most important thing. First of all, if you're the person, you need to trust your gut. You know your situation better than anybody. And I've worked with 4 different women in 30 years who had never been hit in their relationship, but were in very controlling relationships. And when they left, their husband set the house on fire. Because that
I'm like, oh gosh, but that's an anomaly, right? The 4.
Well, 4 times. The first time I heard it, and then I heard it again and again. And these were not, the stereotype, people. And the reason that I say that, it doesn't mean if you leave that's going to happen, but your partner better than anybody. And just because they've been able to control one partner without any physical violence, that doesn't mean that when a victim takes his or her control back and tries to leave, that the violence might not escalate. So you always have to have a safety plan, and think about that and implement that before you just pick up and leave. In some relationships, if you don't believe that your partner would do that and you know them well, then trust that. But if you think that there's a chance that they're going to escalate, you need to trust that too. And if you're a person where it's your friend or your family member or, your next door neighbor, never say to somebody, you have to leave, because victims are people pleasers and they're going to do things because they don't want people to be mad at them or to like them. And they always are going to think somebody else knows better. And you have to have a plan. A lot of times you have to have a safety plan, and you have to do it safely. And if people aren't leaving, it's because they're not ready. And if they leave before they're ready, they're going to go back anyway. So you need to—
That's interesting.
When you're ready, I'm here. Not you have to get ready because I don't think you should be there.
Well, there's that show, I think it's called Pretty Little Liars, Pretty Little Liars.
Yep, I saw it.
With Nicole Kidman. And there's that whole scene in there, not seeing it, I think it carries over into multiple shows where she is in a domestic violent relationship, and it does take time, and she plots it out. And it's during that time she is going to see a therapist as well. It's scary. I mean, the whole thing is super scary.
It's scary. And if you're going to talk about that, I was actually very annoyed, actually angry when I watched that, because in many ways I thought they did a good job. But the therapist that she went to see told her to leave and said things that in a real life situation could have put her in more danger.
Interesting. So for those that watch it and somehow, they think, well, why isn't my therapist telling me to leave? That you're really
she told her and what she told her to do. As a therapist, you don't have the right to tell anybody to do anything. That's not the job of a therapist. The job of a therapist is to listen and to help people help themselves, and to let them tell you what works for them, not you tell them. It's not a therapist's job to tell somebody what to do. 75%, and in my experience, it's much higher, but this is what the research says, so we have to go with the research. 75% of women that get killed in violent relationships get killed when they leave. They don't get killed for staying. They get killed when they leave, because that's when they're taking the control back. So it's really important to let somebody tell you their situation, not to tell them what's best for them because you know better. Nobody knows better. Everybody has their own path. Everybody, is given free will. And, sometimes free will is making a choice that's unsafe or unhealthy. But you know what? That's their choice. And if they do it because it's something somebody else tells them to do, and God forbid happens, is that something you want on your conscience?
So knowing that this month is domestic violence awareness, when you see research out there, how many marriages, relationships do you believe are involved in something unhealthy?
Well, unhealthy is different than domestic violence. I mean, the research says, 50% will be in some type of abusive relationship in their lifetime, and that's what's just being reported.
That's a lot. 50% in some
people don't talk about it doesn't mean it's not going on. It means they're not talking about it. And the people that aren't talking about it, they're not talking because they're afraid.
Now that makes sense. So when you look at those numbers, and you said that the numbers are actually going up because you're even seeing more people coming in for therapy, do you believe that it's going to, like, what now that we're giving it more and more awareness, thankfully we have this month where we're highlighting it, is this the best way, or is there even more ways that we should be doing to really say, we got to get these numbers down?
Well, I think, again, domestic violence is where one person has all or vast majority of control in the relationship and the other person has none. Some people call it codependent, but it's not, because it's not, 50-50 where they're dependent on each other. It's one person is pretty much, totally dependent. Now that gender roles have changed and women are out in the workforce, very often making more money than, their partners. That's changed significantly than when I started doing this in the late 80s. It's a lot different. But there are a lot of couples having a lot of problems because a lot of things aren't going well in the world, and a lot of things haven't gone well in their lives. And some people blame their partner for things that aren't working in their lives because they don't want to look at themselves.
That's
Your vibe attracts your tribe. So really, the healthier you get, the healthier you attract. And maybe not the same way, but the same level of healthy, which is why another reason why I wrote this book, because people need to do the work and learn some of the red flags and how to have a healthy relationship. Otherwise, they keep getting in the same type of relationship. I call it the same person with a different name, because that's their normal. And for them, what's normal is very different than what's healthy.
Oh, so we have to take a quick break. But when we come back, I want to talk more about that same person with a different name. And also, we've been talking about a lot of the downside. Give some key takeaway tips that people can start to work on to have a healthy relationship. And so when we come back, we'll go into that. This episode is brought to you by my very own labor of love, my most recent book, Relaunch. This book is a collection of my stories, other stories, and is a motivational guide to living a new 3HQ lifestyle, sparking your heart to ignite your life. It's available for purchase via Amazon. Get ready to try on the 3HQ method that I've been using for years throughout my entire life, reaching the next level in all areas, both professionally and personally. Get your copy today at www.therelaunchbook.com. Everyone, welcome back. I am here with Dr. Laura, and we're talking about relationships, unhealthy, and how we can make them healthier. This is going to be a very important part for us to really be focused on with the tips to make these healthy relationships when this is such an unhealthy world right now we're living in. And one of the things, Dr. Laura, as we were taking a break, we were talking about same person, different name, how we keep bringing in those people. Can we talk about that? And then I'm really curious then to move into, we hear often about traditional relationships versus non-traditional, and what does that actually mean? So let's first talk about, why do people fall into this cycle of same person, different name?
Because I believe we all come to this planet to learn lessons, and every person that's significant in our life comes to teach us something. And if we don't learn the lesson, then we keep meeting the same person. I call it with a different name, usually an escalated version each time, until you learn the lesson. And then once you do, that person seems to work their way out of your life, and you work on a different lesson.
And so this lesson, so when you notice everybody out there that is starting to bring in the same type of person, what is your best suggestion for people when they're like, wait a second, I'm seeing a pattern here? How do you get them to say, all right, are you getting your lesson? And how do you help them move through the lesson a little faster?
Right, because every challenge comes with, a lesson. And a lot of times in relationships, some of the lessons have to do with boundaries, but most often I see them having to do with, perceptions of self-worth and believing that they're lovable. And you're not going to get somebody that's going to love you in a healthy way if you don't feel like you deserve love. Because
So we're going down to those core beliefs too, limiting beliefs and not feeling loved, not feeling safe, not feeling worthy.
well, not only not feeling loved, but not feeling lovable. Not only that I'm not loved, but I'm not worthy of love. I'm not good enough to be loved. And especially if the message is in your family of origin, the family you grew up with, and maybe early boyfriends or girlfriends, gave you negative messages and everybody's saying the same things, people start to believe them and basically say to other people, so tell me, what do I think of myself? And then integrate that into their self-perception. And that's when it gets very unhealthy.
And so when you're talking about this, it makes me think right now where marriage relationships are changing. I mean, it's the fundamentals. A lot of people are starting to feel like, is there a traditional or is it more non-traditional now? What are you thinking is really happening with relationships? And, how are you kind of seeing the landscape change?
Well, relationships are changing. Gender roles have changed. We not only have the gender roles changing where more women are working and going to school and doing other things, but also with pronouns and with gender fluid. There's all sorts of change that way. But traditionally, it was one man, one woman for as long as you both may live. But now in the LGBTQIA community, people are getting married. So that's become, in most circles, more socially acceptable. But there are also a lot of what it seemingly seem non-traditional that are becoming much more mainstream, things like swinging and polyamory and BDSM and May-December relationships, interracial relationships. There are all different types of relationships that may not be traditional, but as long as they both have free will, or more than both, have free will consent, and there's no manipulation or coercion, then they can be healthy relationships. They're just
okay, Dr. Laura, what is this May to December relationship?
What is that? A May to December relationship is a relationship where there's more of a 15-year age difference between the partners, but they're both over 18. They're both.
Got it. So there are so many non-traditional types of relationships these days. And in your book, you go into this in more detail. What are you seeing that this is going to continue? Like we're not going to go back to that traditional, like it seems like it's dropping quite a bit, or what do you
dropping? Things are changing. The average marriage, I don't know what an average marriage is, but research says the average marriage is lasting 10 years.
Is divorce higher? It used to be 50%, and then second marriages ending would be 63, and then third marriages, it was around 76%. Are those still kind of true, or are you seeing that they're actually increasing or decreasing?
Well, I think, it depends who you talk to. I think you could probably find research to support anything. They're saying what they call the gray divorce. People middle-aged and older are divorcing at a much higher level than they ever have before. People are living a lot longer than they ever have before. So you get somebody that's 50 or 60 that thinks, I still might have 20 years left, where years ago that was considered, the beginning of the end. So people are looking at their lives differently now. And not everybody that goes into a marriage is going in where this is forever. It's until it doesn't work anymore.
I get that. So in your book, when you talk about how to have a healthy relationship in an unhealthy world, what are some of the key tips and takeaways that we could actually start to use today in our relationships?
Well, I think when you are having a conflict with your partner, you have to think about what's more important, the issue or the relationship. If the issue is more important, maybe substance abuse or infidelity or something that's a deal breaker to you, then you need to look at that. But if the relationship is more important, then how important is being right? And it's important to listen to your partner, and you can validate what they're saying, thinking, or feeling without agreeing with the content. And I think a lot of times, when people are sharing their thoughts or feelings, they want to be validated. They don't necessarily have to be right, but they want to feel heard and validated. So let your partner know that you're hearing them, and that what they have to say matters to you, whether or not you agree with it.
So could you give us another takeaway, another tip that we might be able to think about as well?
I think, technology has a lot of benefits, but it also has a lot of drawbacks. And, one of the things I talk about in the book is I call it menage a trois. And it's the couple and technology is the third person, which isn't really a person, in the bed. And what happens is there's more attention going to the technology, even in the marital bed, than to the partner. And I think there needs to come a time where you put your phone away and your iPad away and focus on each other and not just on the device.
I think that we all can sometimes claim, to be part of that, where it's just, you get so caught up in going to bed and then I just want to check,
We all do it. And
one last time, I just need to check it one last time.
And it's, one of the things I talk about in the book is what they call technoference. And the thing is, it's not only being on it, but if you have it right there, then it's that hypervigilance waiting. And when it dings, all of a sudden, all your attention goes to the device and away from the partner. So having time where you put it on silent or put it in the other room, it's okay.
Is that what you suggest? You say, put it in the other room, or, is that the best? Is that the best way? Because then all of a sudden people will say, but then I can't wake up in the morning because my alarm is in the other room.
So buy an alarm clock for $12.99.
I knew you were going to say that. Well, one thing I do want to, go ahead.
Is it that you can't wake up, or that's just a really convenient excuse to say you need your phone?
And well, that's why, there's people that don't even have
or your partner.
Yep, totally. I think, what it does, it makes a ton of sense because we are so, literally up until we go to sleep. And even when you're setting your alarm, do you then quickly go and check something else? So I think that makes a lot of sense. One of the things that you also talk about is this idea that, the technology also brings outside influences, and there's the ability for porn, and you have a pretty strong opinion on, porn and cheating. Can we go into that?
Well, I think, one of the big questions that people always ask is porn cheating? And the simple answer is no, it's not cheating. It's only cheating if it goes against the rules of the relationship. Every relationship has rules. And if in the relationship, porn is considered cheating, then it's cheating in that relationship. The porn itself isn't cheating, but it violates the rules of the relationship. Some couples watch porn together, so it absolutely wouldn't be. Now, it becomes unhealthy, which is different than cheating. It becomes unhealthy in the relationship where one partner or both partners are using so much porn that they'd rather be, watching porn and masturbating to porn than being with their partner. And it starts to interfere with the sex life with the partner. Then it becomes a problem.
So you're saying that there is a healthy way to use porn?
Absolutely.
Okay. And then once you start to realize, wait a second, we've kind of taken it to the next level where now we're not finding pleasure between us. We're only finding pleasure with the actual porn. That's when you've kind of crossed the line and you need to readdress it.
Well, yeah, because then it's a problem in the relationship. It may not be cheating because, you both have said that, you're okay with it, but now it's interfering with the relationship. So now it's a problem. It's not that somebody's doing something wrong or bad, unless they're watching something, that, child porn or whatever, then we're having a whole different conversation.
Exactly.
But, it's interfering with the relationship. And so that's when anything becomes a problem. Although I have, people that will come in that, watch porn and their partner sends them in, says, you have to go see her because you're addicted to porn. Well, watching porn and liking porn doesn't make somebody a porn addict. There's criteria for addiction. And, it's usually more of a fear of intimacy or vulnerability. There are definitely
there's bigger issues to be uncovered.
But it's not that. It's just there's a lot of safety behind the screen.
Totally get that. But Dr. Laura, as unfortunately we're running out of time, probably should have addressed this at the beginning because people are very interested in, how to handle this. But where can people follow up with you if they have additional questions, or how can they get, where can they find how to have a healthy relationship in an unhealthy world?
The How to Have a Healthy Relationship in an Unhealthy World is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or wherever you buy your books from. My website is drlauracounseling.com. My email is drlaura@drlauracounseling.com. And if you want to call or text me, it's on the website.
And especially right now, given that this is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, I can't thank you enough for coming on, highlighting this, because we do have to be aware that sometimes, we don't want to think about our relationship in those ways because it's scarier than just to kind of like push it underneath the mat. So really appreciate you sharing your thoughts, your suggestions, especially the tips on how to have a healthy relationship. And for those that want to hear more about, the actual month and helping put the word out that this isn't acceptable, is there a place that you suggest? Is it your website to hear more about some of the things that you can do?
Absolutely. Or the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence has a lot of information on their website. That way people can tune in, but it doesn't matter what state. Most states have their own coalition, and can get information. They all have safe and confidential shelters and hotlines, which doesn't necessarily mean that you need to go in there. But if you need some help making a safety plan or knowing how to do that, they can help you.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for being here again, Dr. Laura Streyffeler. And please, if you are in a situation where you are at all uncomfortable with your relationship, reach out to her. And again, this is about awareness and making sure that you know as much as you need to. Thanks again, everyone, for being here. Relaunch, and always relaunch in that safe, wonderful way.